Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our role in Palestinian liberation as queer Jews, a conversation on intersectionality, water, and international solidarity, hosted by Queer Mikveh Project. My name is Rebecca Erev, and I and Rebecca Maria Goldschmidt, who's one of our panelists today, and Kyle Rocco East are the Queer Mikveh Project team. And we're also really happy to welcome a full ASL interpretation team. We have 2 deaf interpreters and 2 hearing interpreters. Thank you, Jennifer, Yay, Joe, and Trisha. And a little visual description of me. I am a white person with brown hair, bangs, the top bun, ish, brown glasses, some sparkly purple lipstick, and a quilted vest, gold necklace, and another quilted colorful piece behind me. And we are here in a disability justice framework event, which means take care of yourself. Anytime you need to take a break, shut off your camera, go to the bathroom, do whatever you need to move around, please do that. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. A lot of times we share our names, our pronouns, what brings us here, where the lands we're coming from, and anything else you want to share so we can build community and get to know each other in the small ways we can on these cyber networks. I'm really excited to introduce a fabulous panel today. And we'll share their bios in the chat as they come up to speak. But we're welcoming today Penny Rosenwasser, Zephyr Elise, Dean Spade, Mordecai Cohen Ettinger, and Rebecca Maria Goldschmidt. What we'll do today is we'll hear from a few speakers, and then we'll take a little Q&A. Penny needs to leave a little early, so we want to give her time to answer any questions. And then we'll go back to hearing from one more person and open up the Q&A again. And I'm going to hand it over to Oren for a little tech orientation.
Thanks, Rebecca. Welcome, everyone. My name is Oren. I use they or any pronouns. I'm one of tonight's tech support. And some things we want you to know about tonight's Zoom. In the bottom, you can find the CC icon, which you can tap to show captions. And if anything comes up that you need tech support with, you can find my name with an asterisk and the words tech support in the participants tab and send me a private chat. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Oren. One thing I want to mention is we're also doing a bit of a fundraiser today for Queer Mikveh Project. We're a very small organization, and because of our anti-Zionist politics as a Jewish project, it's been really challenging for us to fundraise. So we'll do a little bit about that at the end, but the other thing I wanted to mention is that we're doing a dual fundraiser. So we're splitting the money that we raise with a mental health clinic that we've developed a relationship with in the West Bank. So last time we did an event, we were able to send them $4,000. And we didn't split the proceeds, we didn't split equally. So Queer Mikvah Project did under 2,000. But it was really amazing to be able to send that much money to them in a time when they really, really need it. The other thing I want to mention is our beloved Queer Mikvah Project friend, Zephyr Elise, who is also a panelist today, may have the opportunity to join the Conscious Convoy. So Oren will put that in the chat and you can learn more about it. So if they are able to do that, we will be helping to fundraise for them to do that too. And one of the ways that we'll do that is to gather gift miles. So you can donate miles via the airlines, and we'll put in the chat the airlines that we can collect miles from. So if you are someone who has miles from those 3 airlines, send us an email, please, and we'll be in touch with you if it comes through that Zephyr's able to do this. Okay, thanks in advance for keeping an eye out on that. And maybe someone will put our email in the chat as well. Okay. And with that, we're going to move on to our panelists. And I'd like to welcome Penny Rosenwasser first. Hi, Penny.
Hi, Rebecca.
We're going to ask Penny about her anti-Zionist organizing today, but just a little tidbit about Penny that maybe we'll talk to her more about another time. She also has done so much organizing in the lesbian music community too. So maybe we'll hear some stories about that another time. But for now, we're going to focus on this question, and Penny, feel free to answer this however you like. How can we use our bodies, which are mostly made of water, as agents of change to align global movements for liberation? How can we mobilize our Jewish and queer communities in the work for a free Palestine?
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm honored to be here and with all these panelists. Mordecai, it's been a minute. It's really nice to see your face. I'm white, short brown hair with a little gray and a little red, black glasses, silver earrings, black clothing. And apologies that I have to leave a little bit early. I'm sorry. And I just wanted to start by saying what I know, I'm sure everyone on the panel, we're together on this, just acknowledging that today the death toll in Gaza from Israeli genocide is almost 20,000 people killed, 2/3 women and children, 1,200 or so Israelis killed, and just want to say, may all their memories be for a blessing. Since this is a queer panel, and I guess I'm the elder here, I thought it would be useful to include some of the early lesbian queer leadership who have used our bodies in solidarity with Palestine. First Intifada, 1987, Hagar Rublev, one of the key leaders of the Israeli women's peace movement. And that women's peace movement was considered the heart of the Israeli peace movement in that Intifada. Hagar was a co-founder of Women in Black in Israel. And for those of you unfamiliar with it, I just wanted to share, Women in Black was founded in the trajectory of the Women of the Black Sash in South Africa, the Mothers of the Disappeared in Argentina, so nonviolent women's peace movements. So right after the start of the first Intifada, Jewish women in Israel and Palestinian citizens of Israel started having these vigils in major cities around Israel. Every Friday at noon for an hour, dressed in black, completely silent, holding signs, so using their bodies to hold these signs that said "Daila Kibush" in Hebrew, or "End the occupation." Many people around them would call them traitor or whore, threw eggs and tomatoes at them. Very important movement. It spread to the US and all over the world. So Hagar was a co-founder of that group, and later, and a queer lesbian. Wanted to make sure that's an assumption. She also later co-founded Bat Shalom, a very important Jewish women's peace organization in Israel, translates as Daughters of Peace. And they worked deeply and authentically with between Israeli and Palestinian women. And also a lesbian leader of the Israeli women's peace movement at that time, Haya Shalom, Sephardic, working class. Her family lived in Israel for centuries. Haya was actually nominated among 1,000 women for the Nobel Peace Prize. And together, Haya and Hagar used their bodies, again, holding signs and banners at Women in Black at these vigils every week, but also led peace marches throughout Jerusalem. I got to be with them in 1989, 5,000 women, Israeli Jews and Palestinian citizens of Israel, marching through Jerusalem against the occupation. In the US, also many lesbians among them. And in the US, many lesbians have been part of the peace movement here, and queer folks. In the 1980s, a very important group called New York Women Jews Against the Occupation, that included wonderful lesbian leaders, Irina Klepvich and Melanie K. Kantrowitz, both white Ashkenazi Jews. More recently, Jewish Voice for Peace was co-founded in 1996 by 3 young white Jewish women, one of whom was a lesbian, Julia Kaplan, still very active. Of course, the director of Jewish Voice for Peace is a fantastic queer Jewish leader, Stephanie Fox. Both Stephanie and Julia have often put their bodies on the line in solidarity with Palestine. And then I also wanted to share with you, in 2002, I was part of a group of Jews in the Bay Area who put JVP on the map and really made visible in a new way Jewish opposition to the occupation by putting our bodies on the line. It was myself and Cecily Saraski were 2 of the 3 leaders of this action. This is when Israel invaded Jenin refugee camp and slaughtered 50 Palestinians and destroyed many homes. And in 48 hours, we organized this action. We sat in at the Israeli consulate in San Francisco and closed it down. And then we went out on the street on Montgomery Street. There were 13 of us, including Micah Bazant. I can't remember everyone, but definitely queers were in the house. We shut down Montgomery Street, were arrested. And again, that got major headlines in the Bay Area around Jews against the occupation. And then just, of course, since October 7th, I mean, we know many amazing visible actions with a lot of queer Jews in the leadership, putting our bodies on the line in incredible ways. At the Oakland Federal Building last month, 700 of us occupied the Federal Building for 7 hours. A lot of the leadership was young queer Jews. And 472 of us were arrested. And I was one of the song leaders and chant leaders, along with Cole Kravitz. So again, queer visible leadership here. And for 7 hours, we were leading songs and chants. And I remember leading Lo Yisa Goy, the Israeli peace song, and I was saying the English words, "And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid." And I felt the tears because I was thinking of the children in Gaza who were not living in peace and were terrified. And I threw my arms up, and the AP photographer took that picture and was in the LA Times and the Washington Post, because I think it exemplified how we were all feeling. But that was a really very much using my body through that whole action. And then this past Monday, I was very honored to be among 18 Jewish women elders who chained ourselves to the White House fence, calling for a ceasefire, immediate and permanent, on the day that Biden was holding a Hanukkah party inside the White House that night. It was very powerful to be there. Many of us lesbians are queer, and we were supported by this fantastic group of mostly young queer activists from New York City who trained us and helped us chain ourselves and fed us. And it was a very intergenerational action, just as as the elders, we were the ones who were the most visible, but I just wanted to make sure to include that. And I just wanted to end with a little bit about solidarity. Some of you are maybe familiar with the quote from my mentor of blessed memory, Melanie K. Kantrowitz, white Jewish lesbian leader, who said, solidarity is the political version of love. And I wanted to also share this quote from another mentor of mine, Aurora Levins Morales, queer Puerto Rican Jewish poet, historian, activist. And this is an excerpt of something Aurora wrote where she said, I am a daughter of people who were outgunned and refused to die. I am a fierce Latina Jew holding out a rose to Palestine. And I'll just end with these two. This was an excerpt of something written years ago by the Youth Wing of Jewish Voice for Peace. And one of the main writers of it was a young queer Palestinian Jew, Amira Mizrahi. And they wrote, we refuse to knowingly oppress others. We refuse to oppress each other. We will not carry the legacy of terror. We won't buy the logic that slaughter means safety. We commit to equality, solidarity, and integrity. We seek breathing room and dignity for all people. And I'll just end by saying, for me, I'm a leader in my synagogue, a racial justice leader. For me, ethnic cleansing and genocide is not my Judaism. Let's create queer solidarity that is accountable, resilient, and shot through with great swaths of love. Thank you.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, Penny. You can see the love and appreciation for you and your work. I'm so moved by the legacy and history of all of you, all the ways that you have woven and met your stream, moved it with the whole river of this movement. And the honor that you pay to those who have mentored you and to those who have laid the foundation for so much of the work that we are doing today. And it really makes me think about, like, when I was at the action at the Capitol building in October, where we got arrested in the rotunda, I just remember feeling with my body, why would anyone support Israel when you could be a part of this work of love? And that the difference of, I mean, it's in a way selfish, of just a quality of life, of if you can open your heart and be a part of liberation movements, that how much that gives you, whereas hating and violence just tears away at your soul. So thank you for being an example of someone who's lets their heart be broken and walks in love in their life. Which brings us to Zephyr, also a walker of love in this life. And Zephyr is, we'll put their bio in the chat. You can learn a little bit more about them. But we'll ask you about we started to learn a bit last week in our panel how Zionism falsely claims Jewish indigeneity to Palestine in order to justify colonizing the land. And so some things we'd love to hear your thoughts on is, how does understanding Palestinians as indigenous shift the narrative? What role does global cross-indigenous organizing play in collective struggles for liberation? And I know you have so much direct experience with that, and your role at spending 4 months at Standing Rock. So thanks, Zephyr.
Those small questions, eh? I thought we were going to do something simple. Genju Aki, greetings, everyone. I just need a moment to land with y'all and celebrate that there are this many people that want to gather on a Monday evening and celebrate who we are, celebrate where we come from, celebrate what we're dreaming together. So thank you for having me. Visual description, I am a mixed race, slightly lighter than my usual olive, lush, melanated complexion would be from here in the Pacific Northwest. I have curly, short, salt and pepper hair, wearing an awesome button up from the 60s. That was my queer two-spirit uncles. Got a little collared vest and a nice purple button-up coat that my mama made for me about 10 years ago. And my background is a painting I just painted for a fundraiser for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund that the Rachel Corrie Foundation put on in Olympia. It's a rendition of the Palestinian flag as thought about in textile patterns with the kufiya in the middle as the white, olive branches and olives as the green, a traditional Tetris pattern for the red, and a tile pattern that represents the mosque of Palestine for the black part. And there is a poem that I wrote out. It's Jabalia by Suhair Hamad, an amazing Palestinian poet who donated it for this use. So it's always a circle, right? We're gathering in circle. And even in this one piece, that was a circle that brought that together. So thanks y'all for being here in this circle. And appreciation to this relative that's doing all this hard work, making sure the words are being heard and felt by the spirit ears. No matter what our ears can hear, no matter what we can see, we have eyes and ears of our heart, as my Nunna elders teach, that can hear beyond language. Spirit talks in all language. I reckon I'm on the hook for this question because I'm an indigenous Jew. My people are indigenous to the places now occupied by modern-day Mexico. But my ancestors also survived invasions by the Nahua Empire, by the Spanish Empire, by the Mexican government. And yet, after 520 years of some of the most intense and hard of turning times, we still remain. Similarly, as Jews, as my Mizrahi and Sephardi and Beit Israel ancestors have faced centuries and millennia of changing times of targeted oppressions, of harms and of genocides, yet we still remain. And those resiliencies are here in us. But if I'm coming from an indigenous perspective, if I'm coming from the traditions that were born of the earth and the water and the air, where my ancestors' ancestors first became the people, because they were called, they were created. In our tradition, we sprang from one specific sacred stream. That was the place where we made connection to this earth. And we were given the roles and responsibilities, the deep relationships to all life around us. That is what defines our indigeneity. Indigenous is not coming from any book, any list, any role, any card that can be given by any government or occupying power. It is a direct, lifelong ceremony and commitment in our prayer, in a lot of our prayers. And I'll also say there's no one way to be indigenous. We are 1,500 known nations, and that doesn't count all clans and families and houses outside of that. But that's 1,500 known nations of ways to be indigenous, and as many indigenous people there are, as many two-spirits as there are. That's how many ways there are to have an indigenous practice. But in my personal way, we prove our indigeneity by how we walk on this earth, and we do it gently. Each footstep is a prayer that asks permission of this earth that we all share, this ancient grandmother we all share, for permission to go in that way and to do so gently, and to take that step, making it better, to honor all the 7 generations that came before, and to think about the implications that our actions have on the 7 generations that go forward. We can't own anything. We can't own land. We can't own trees. We can't own water. We're just here to caretake for them. And then we pass them on, just as our ancestors and our elders caretake those precious, beautiful life sources and gifted them to us as our birthright. But once again, right isn't a right that I have something, I own something. My same birthright, I have from my birth a duty, a sacred commitment, an honorable commitment to caretake and to pass on. So if we acknowledge this as how we came to be the people of place, let's look at what indigenous is not. Indigenous is not cementing over ancient springs to stop sources of life. We say Miniwachoni, Lakota lands out at Studying Rock, right? Water is life. All the ways you can say water is sacred. In our prayers, we say earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, fire, my spirit. We're not disconnected. How could you possibly commodify, control, or own something that is part of us, but that we are also part of in this ancient sacred web of life? You know, indigenous does not raise the lands and salt the lands that give the food. It doesn't target the animals for harm. Indigenous elders, grandmothers, uncles and aunties, and our two-spirit defenders have always, when attacks have come for our ancient forest, they have always gone to protect. They will throw down and put their bodies and their prayers and their medicine powers in front of whatever is coming to harm those ancient sacred trees, whether it's a small grove or a giant forest, small oasis. We've all seen those images of that elder Palestinian relative who, when the IEOF came to burn down that 1,000-year-old olive grove, what did she do? She grabbed that trunk of that olive tree and she wept. Each tear of prayer for protection, for help, for a miracle. As Indigenous people, we cannot separate ourselves from our surroundings any more than we could step out of the roles and responsibilities we have to them or our communities. It's just as natural as breathing. To be Indigenous in an era of imperialism that goes far beyond this war, and actually far beyond the 500 years that Turtle Island has been occupied. This is multiple millennia where spirit sickness has come and infected different nations at different times, thinking, oh, I can be higher by making everything else lower. And wherever this idea has come, any of the earth people, any of the water people, any of the protectors of the airs and the mysteries that go along with the lands, that's the focus, that's the target of the violence, of the hatred, of the dehumanization. It's where the name calling starts. It's where the othering begins, because it's so much easier to exterminate something that isn't quite like you, isn't human like you. Be outraged if you were going through this, but if you're not me, if you're not human, then it doesn't matter. Look at all that we've allowed, all the harm in our modern world that we've allowed. because we've stepped away from connection to each other in this earth. Would we allow what's going on in Philistine to ever happen? No. But similarly, would we allow what we see on the 5 going by those industrial meat markets where those cow beans are just put in a concentration camp of their own and taken away from a natural life and commodified to feed us? As indigenous people, our very identity is commodified. This idea of Israelis as indigenous. Think about what happened to us as indigenous people here. Someone came from across the water and were scared and had been harmed in the place they called home. And as indigenous people, we opened up our arms, and my Nuna people, we were the first ones to hit the Spaniards. They were scared. They were starving. They weren't okay. And we took them in and we fed them, tried to teach them how to bathe because somebody had to do it. The world needed to know bathing is okay. You're not going to die. We taught them how to be in our new world. And what did they do but decide that their only safety was to come and to harm us, and to harm us in the most violent manner, in some of the deepest betrayals. But as indigenous people, we would defend, and this is another thing, you know, as anti-Zionist Jews, we can be in solidarity with our Palestinian relatives, but we don't get to dictate how their liberation looks and how they get there. As indigenous people, we alone get to dictate how we get free. But you best understand, as indigenous people, we have teachings. We have callings to defend, and we have sacred callings to defend and to fight, to protect the lands, the waters, the elders, the culture, the language. But that also means there's going to be a soul cost. We're going to have to pay a soul cost, and we can only do what we're willing to pay a soul cost. And in my nation, if you went and you fought and you took life, you could never come back. No matter how justified, you did not get to come back to community because you could not bring that hurt to the next generation that was coming up. You had to go apart. It was a deep cost. Indigenous people are willing to pay the deep cost. Occupiers only know to write checks that they don't believe they're ever going to have to pay for, and they hurt all life. So to kind of close out here, you know, as indigenous people, you know, our indigenous governments, our occupation governments that are tried again in Indian form as Bureau of Indian Governments, they're slower to do these letters and signals of solidarity for Palestine. But our frontliners, all of us from day one, let's go. Because this is the same struggle. We don't have to be told how we need to support. We understand this story. It is written in our blood. It is written in our ancestor stories. We have already done every single thing that is going on there. Granted, the technology is newer and that is changing, but the viciousness we have always survived. So we are there and we are down, and we are telling the world to join us because the world needs to stand together. This is a moment where we all build a really big, beautiful dream for all of us together, where none of us get to go. We're still in climate crisis. Wars and white phosphorus and harming the land and poisoning the water is never going to be an indigenous practice. And it's definitely not going to be an indigenous practice when our ancient grandmother Earth is asking us to slow everything down and stop what we've been doing to get to a better world for all of us and to try to have something for tomorrow. We can do this, relatives. Thanks for listening. Ooh.
Thank you so much, Zephyr, for that calling in, helping us feel and reminding us all that we're part of a whole. We're all these little drops that are part of the ocean. And thank you for all the work that you do to welcome us into our lives as prayers and our work as prayers. And with that, we're going to move on and hear from Dean Spade. Dean, Gaza is often referred to as the world's largest open air prison. Wondering if you can speak a bit to the intersections between organizing for abolition, which you've done a lot of work around, and organizing for Palestinian liberation.
Yeah. Thank you for organizing this. Thanks to the interpreters and the tech people. I'm Dean. I'm a white trans person wearing a black shirt, and the background is my house. One obvious connection is the material reality. Really similar conditions of caging people in many places in the world. Right now, as I understand it, there's more Palestinians in Israeli jails and prisons than there have been in decades. And those people are facing conditions that we could see overlapping with conditions faced by immigrants in prisons in the United States, people in jails and prisons in the criminal legal system, people in psychiatric and medical confinement, things like thirst, starvation, healthcare denial, all kinds of violence, including sexual violence. And simultaneously, the literal apparatuses that make that happen are very shared. Like many of the same prison and war profiteering companies are building the material conditions for caging people here and there, the walls, the weapons, and literally US tax dollars funding it here and there. So the overlap in the organizing is very inherent at the base level to just the material conditions. And there's the same, bipartisan support for Israeli colonialism throughout the US government, all the presidents, Democrat or Republican, and those people all also support the other forms of imprisonment happening here in the US that abolitionists oppose. So it's just same targets, whether it's profiteers or politicians, all the people, all the elites making this happen. I think another sort of part of abolitionist organizing that's overlapping with Palestinian liberation work is an awareness that the nature of these systems is what it is, that racial capitalism and colonialism need to cage people. They do it in lots of different ways, and there's different legal rationales. Like here in the US, we pretend that imprisoning people who are migrants is a civil system of administrative detention, whereas the criminal system is a different system. We have lots of ways we make legal rationales for distinct systems. And as abolitionists and as people who oppose colonialism, we see that it's the same thing. That all cages, confinement, and control are unjustifiable and illegitimate. And we have to have a politics that can spot that. Whether that's mandatory services for youth or immigrants, that's confinement. Whether that's special alternative courts, still policing and confinement. Whether it's dressed up as some kind of care or as less harsh, we see those are just euphemisms for cages. And true solidarity means opposing all imprisonment. I think this comes up a lot right now with the legal rationales around is something a war crime? It's like all war is a crime against humanity. Just having that clarity that there's not a certain amount of Palestinian death that's acceptable. I think another shared avenue of our work is spotting the dangers of like humanitarian or other progressive rationales for war and caging. So obviously many of us saw that, pinkwashing image that was circulated of a Israeli soldier raising a rainbow flag in Gaza. There's expert propaganda happening for many, many years on the Israeli side and the US side, those kinds of justifications for our systems. Here in the US, that might look like, LGBT police and the police marching in pride and all of that. I also, I recently, just yesterday, saw for the first time this horrendous, I'm putting a link. Oh, I'm not putting a link in the chat, forget it. I saw this horrendous tweet from the Canadian government celebrating eagle-shaped building at a Quebec prison where they're going to have indigenous ceremonies for imprisoned people. This kind of like idea that you could build an appropriate prison for indigenous people in a colonial context. Same rationales are used to expand US prisons in various states with the idea that they will be gender responsive. Being able to spot humanitarian rationales for war and caging and borders is really essential to all of the resistance that we're talking about today. I'll just finish by saying that I think right now is a particularly urgent time for abolitionists to think carefully about anti-state or anarchist politics. I think it's a gap for a lot of people who are in the Palestine liberation movement, who are US-based people, and also for a lot of radical queers and abolitionists. There's a lot to cut through because we've lived through generations of anti-anarchist repression. And so there are many misunderstandings about anti-state methods and beliefs, including a very dangerous and racist belief that anarchist politics are all white or come from white people. That erases many lineages of anarchist anti-colonial resistance. So I just want to finish with a really urgent call that we all be studying anti-colonial, anti-state politics and tactics, including rich histories and contemporary work from Jewish, Palestinian, queer, Black, and indigenous anarchist sources. And I'm happy to talk more about that if anyone wants to, about why I'm worried about this gap right now, its impacts on our movements, and why it's so important for those of us who want to abolish borders, war, and cages. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Dean. Yeah, and thank you for that call to just help us dream into other ways of being, which I really felt like Zephyr invited us into as well, into what can our lives be outside of these state-sanctioned cages and systems that we're living under. And I always remember when I first learned about the wall going up in Palestine, I couldn't imagine it at all. Jeff Halper was talking about it, and I did a painting of it, and it was like this big brick wall, because I couldn't even imagine what a huge cement wall would look like. And now we know what that looks like, and there's no denying that it's a prison wall. And what will it be to take down all of these walls and welcome people into our lives and welcome people to make home who want home in a new place. I'm just going to take a moment now. Mordecai, we'll come to you for a minute, but I do want to give a moment to see if there are any questions. If people have questions, you can put them in the chat, and we will visit them. I see someone said, Dean, do you have a suggested reading list by any chance? So maybe you can share that with us if you do, and we can put it in the follow-up email. Okay, great. We'll grab those. Yeah, but does anybody else have a question, especially that you could address to Penny because she needs to leave in a little bit? And then we'll meet back with hear from our last two panelists. Okay.
I have a question for Penny. Oh, sorry. Rebecca, is that okay?
Yeah, I saw one in the chat from Zephyr too, so let's ask them both. Zephyr says, Penny, what is your big dream for this world?
Oh, a small question. How much time do we have? One of the things that I was trying to make sure I didn't go over time, so I left out this quote that many of us may have been hearing recently from Angela Davis, another queer leader, not Jewish, who has been saying, change is possible. The future does not have to replicate the past. And so I'm just trying to hold that. And, you know, on this whole idea of we have to imagine how it can be before we make what it can be. So, you know, what's my big dream for this world? Wow, that we can create a more just and generous world together where we're all, that's fair, you know, where we're all treated equally. We're all, what we keep saying about what's going on now in Palestine, that all lives are valued equally precious. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's so deep. And it's so not how this world is functioning, including in this country around racism. And trans oppression and disability oppression and all of that. So to me, that's my dream. I'll keep it at that. A more just and generous world where all lives are valued and treated as equally precious. That's enough for now. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Penny.
Thanks, Penny. I
And
just
again,
have a quick
apologies that I
question.
have to leave. I'm sorry that I have to leave in a few minutes. Sorry. Yeah.
You should ask your question still, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much, Penny, and everyone, and Dean, especially for the call to study anarchist thinking. I think it's very, very important, and I'm doing that too, and be happy to connect on that. But Penny, I'm wondering about in all of the many actions and all of the many things you've participated in solidarity with Palestine, is there something about song or about singing that you could speak to? If you feel like that is an effective or more effective just personally or just generally or marching, or I'm just interested in your relationship to voice and song. And you're muted.
I love this question. Thank you, Rebecca. Actually, in my 20s, my lover and I traveled the country singing songs of celebration and struggle around the country. So music is really, it's where I feel home. And again, getting to do that at this action at the Oakland Federal Building. I mean, it was a lot to be doing it for 7 hours with Cole, but just getting to pour my heart into those songs. Music is healing for me, and just to be able and feeling it in my whole body. So getting to help me be very present and embodied and just not in my head, which I think for at least some of us as middle-class white people, it can be easy to just stay in our heads. And during this whole crisis, I just keep praying, please help me hold on to my humanity. Please don't let me numb out. And music is, I think, a really beautiful, valuable tool. This beautiful, beautiful song that Saul Weiss wrote, Ceasefire Now, I mean, every time I sing it, I just want to cry. And we sang that throughout the 7 hours at the federal building. And I'm sure folks are singing it around the country, but that's one, I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast. I forgot. I apologize. That singing that song, the ceasefire now, slowly from the depths, and thinking about the children being killed in Gaza, I just find a very powerful expression of where my heart is right now. So so thank you for that question.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Penny. There's one more question here from Jem in Australia, where there's a small Jewish anti-Zionist community. And they say they're often the only Jew at a rally or an action or protest, and trying to shepherd Jewish folks away from Zionism. But there's such a sense of urgency right now that this doesn't help us yet, but rather for future community. I guess my question is, can you speak to this, offer some suggestions of ways to show up Jewishly, and if that is useful to do in those spaces as the only Jew in the room? So that's just open to any of the panelists who'd like to address that.
I'd like to chime in on that as the one of maybe less than 10 anti-Zionist Jews that I know of in Japan right now. So I can really relate to that feeling, Jem. And I think what I've done, my strategy, my personal strategy, has just to be a storyteller and to really like use my voice. And that's why I'm interested in Penny's use of song and just voice in general. I've basically been going everywhere that I can in Japan that has a microphone and talking about my experience. And I think we have a responsibility to do that in places that are not, particular, that don't have a particularly like open history of Judaism. I think Australia is not necessarily like Japan. I think you have like a much bigger Jewish population than Japan does. But I do think, I guess it depends on the kind of person that you are, but I've definitely had to step into my role as a voice for anti-Zionism because I know how strong the Zionist voice and the Zionist propaganda is. That for me personally, it's just been, it's basically my job. Like it is my job right now to speak about how I came out of Zionism, how I de-educated myself, re-educated myself, and worked with so many other different people to do that, and what that looks like, and how I've come to, through other studies, like I'm going to talk a little bit later about anti-nuclear and other kind of radical movements for peace and justice, and how they're all related to the issue of Palestine and how that's related to people's lives. I mean, if you're in Australia, there's of course the Aboriginal community is, and also anti-nuclear and other peace justice movements. So I would just say connect with people, like really, I introduce myself as Jewish all the time. I put that first because I think it's an important part of my identity in this particular question. And then, of course, we have other parts of our identities, like our queerness or our mixed racedness or whatever it is. But I do think that personally, I take that as like a job, a responsibility. And if you're not that kind of person who doesn't want to be the extroverted person on the microphone, just one-on-one conversation, I think, is where that thing actually happens the most. So I've just been taking one-on-one meetings and calls and talking to people individually so that people can understand my perspective as an anti-Zionist and how essential that is in liberating Palestine. So yeah, that's kind of my comment on that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah.
Sorry, I was talking so fast.
Yeah, I think I'll also just say one piece to that too, Jem, is because Zionism has been equated so strongly with Judaism, it's important for us as Jews to speak out and say Zionism isn't Judaism. They're two different things, because a lot of people are worried about being anti-Semitic in speaking against Israel because of that. And that's all constructed. That's all part of the media manipulation of the last 75 years. So that's part of why the Jewish voice saying no to occupation is a strong component of freeing Palestine. All right, and we're going to move to Mordecai. Hi, Mordecai. I wonder if you will speak a bit to the intersections between disability justice and Palestinian solidarity movements.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and everyone. This is Mordecai speaking, they, them. I am a white-skinned Ashkenazi Jewish person, trans non-binary. I have salt and pepper hair that's a little bit wavy, and I'm wearing a navy blue shirt. And there's a blurred background behind me where you can see a little bit of a plant. I'm setting a timer for myself. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today in these painful times to build up and sustain our movements of resistance and liberation for Palestine and for collective liberation. I'm really moved and honored to be here with all of you and to be joining my amazing co-panelists. Though, of course, I wish we were coming together amid less dire circumstances. In sharing about the intersections between disability justice and Palestinian solidarity movements, the most important thing to know is that disability justice and the movement for a free Palestine are inextricable. They're really one and the same. This is for numerous reasons. The two most important reasons being that firstly, ableism lies at the root of, props up, and legitimizes all settler colonial and genocidal projects. And secondly, disability justice, as part of its 10 founding principles, calls for and really demands self-determination and collective liberation. And if you're not familiar with the 10 disability justice principles put forth by BIPOC, queer, disabled people, largely leaders from the Sins Invalid community, then I will go ahead and make sure to share a resource with the organizers so you can get access to those. The Sins Invalids Disability Justice Primer, Skin, Teeth, and Bone, I recommend it as required readings for our times. And I'm going to break down ableism a little bit more because as insidious as it is, and as pervasive as it is, it tends to really invisibilize itself. It's very good at hiding itself, so it continues to be misunderstood and overlooked even in our progressive and radical communities. And I'm going to also be quoting, as I'm speaking to you all, some amazing disability justice leaders and thinkers. I will say their names, honor them, give them their props, and then also make sure to be providing resources. In a somewhat recent interview, January 2023 interview to Leila T.L. Lewis, a dear comrade, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with T.L.'s work, stated that ableism has been used for generations to degrade, oppress, control, and disappear disabled and non-disabled people alike. And that's a very important way to understand ableism, particularly in the context of the 75 plus year struggle for anti-colonial liberation of the Palestinian people. And also for us here and for people everywhere, ableism can be deployed and is deployed against people, whether we are disabled or not. And ableism in and of itself is truly disabling. According to TL, Ableism is the system of assigning value to people's bodies and minds based on socially constructed ideas of normalcy, productivity, desirability, intelligence, excellence, and fitness. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in and enforced by eugenics, anti-Blackness, white supremacy, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. And once again, you do not have to be disabled to experience ableism. In fact, we experience ableism all the time. The backbone of capitalism reduces us to the use value of our bodily or intellectual labor. It also, and this is very pertinent to Palestine solidarity, justifies the mindsets of eugenics and genocide, that an individual or a group could be inherently less worthy of life than another person or group. This would be unthinkable without ableism. And we can't really practice disability justice in solidarity with others until we really get out, expose, and begin to disrupt ableism. That's why I'm sharing about it. In the ongoing pandemic and pandemic denialism, we've seen this mounting normalization of eugenicist thinking and policies, and it's alarming to those of us who are rendered disposable by it. But it's invisible to those who are seemingly unaffected. The genocidal rationales of the settler colonial project of the apartheid state of Israel have always been apparent. Historically, you can look back to founding papers from the Jewish Agency, and the aim for ethnic cleansing was always made clear. But they've been made horrifically clear in the last couple of months with the relentless, disabling, and lethal brutality of the IDF, dating all the way back to Nakba, but certainly today. A brief glance at social media reveals the really searing white supremacy and genocidal disposability being faced by the people of Gaza at this time. A group of 100 doctors in Israel on November 7th wrote an open letter saying that the attacks on hospitals and civilians in Gaza were justified because essentially people's Palestinian lives were rendered forfeit once Hamas did, according to them, the unthinkable in breaching the border wall defenses and taking political prisoners. And Palestinian people, we've seen this, have been repeatedly referred to as less than human in media and social media. It's really horrific. Again, none of this would be possible without the normalization and pervasiveness of ableism, which is, as TL uplifts for us and Patty Byrne of Sins and Ballad uplift for us, ableism is always white supremacist. It's always settler colonial in its nature. It's always sexist and heteropatriarchal. As we know with other settler colonial projects, the ongoing genocidal atrocities have emerged from an established history of dehumanizing, disabling, and the killing of Palestinian people. At a recent training with one of my organizations, Dustin Gibson, an amazing disability justice leader who's part of People's Hub, uplifted the systematic disablement that the IDF has been using for years. A recent example, and I know that I've been going on for about 7 minutes now, so I'm going to try to wrap up. Dustin really uplifted this campaign of systematic disablement has been going on for decades, and it's before the current time. It's seen very, very painfully in the IDF repression against the Great March for Return in 2018, which was a youth-led peaceful march in the March of 2018. And even the UN has been documenting kind of the systematic, unnecessary, completely unjustifiable targeted maiming and disablement of unarmed civilians, healthcare workers, and medics. And again, I have resources for those if people are interested. And that brings us again to this current moment where hospitals and healthcare workers, along with thousands of innocent people and children, have been systematically targeted. So when we see this, we see that our struggles to be in solidarity with Palestinian liberation cannot be disconnected from disability justice. They are our kin. Settler colonialism is inherently disabling. And in order to continue to do this work, we can uplift disability justice principles in it. And we can keep it sustainable for ourselves as well. I am doing my talk from my bed right now. Not all of us can be in the street. So we have to remember that there's many ways that we can uplift our bodies and voices to be part of this struggle. I've included in the resources a toolkit that Health Justice Commons has helped put together for healthcare worker healers and disabled accomplices. And there's a lot of ways that people can continue to stay connected because we all matter in this struggle. And our wholeness and sustainability is really crucial as well if we wage this solidarity in ways that are aligned with disability justice. Thank you so much. I will end it there.
Thank you so much, Mordecai. I'm just really struck by how disability justice invites us into dignity and the dignity of all people, and feeling the ways that this project, the Queer Mikvah project, the intention for land back, for Palestinian liberation, is also about dignity. Dignity of the land and dignity of our bodies are interconnected. That brings us to our last panelist, Rebecca Maria Goldschmidt. Rebecca, will you speak a bit to the intersections between Palestine and the broader global anti-war and demilitarization movements, and a bit about how Palestine is a nuclear issue?
Yes, I can do that. Thanks, everyone. Just really grateful to be here with all of these amazing panelists and everyone listening and everyone who's listening to the recording. I'm going to put one thing in the chat, which is just a resource that was shared through GVP Hover On Network, which is another document that includes anti-Zionist historical thinking resources, including some anarchists. So kind of just going off of what Dean was mentioning earlier. And that document's been really helpful for me. I'll try to speak slowly because I'm a fast talker, so I apologize if I'm going too fast, and I'm going to time myself. So my name is Rebecca Maria Goldschmidt. I have curly brown, dark black hair. I'm wearing blue glasses, and I have light brown skin, and I'm wearing a white sweatshirt with pedals, guitar pedals on it. And I'm calling in from Tokyo, and I actually live in Hiroshima in Western Japan, where I've lived for 2 years, and I'm studying art there. And today I'm going to share some of my thoughts on Palestine from my perspective here in the Pacific and connect a little bit anti-war, demilitarization, and anti-nuclear movement from Hawaii, Japan, Philippines, the kind of region here that also includes Taiwan and Okinawa, so islands of the Pacific. And how the struggle to free Palestine is also connected to the people's movements here against militarization and imperialism and nuclear weapons and power. So when the US bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, there were about 200,000 people who died as a result of a combination of the blast from the bomb, the fires afterwards, the radiation exposure, and the sickness that came with the radiation exposure. But also, because I'm in Tokyo right now, I wanted to also mention that the firebombing of Tokyo in March of 45 actually killed more people in one night, around 100,000 people, a million of and 1 million people were left homeless in Tokyo. So Japan and many other places are not unfamiliar with the experience of bombing. And there has been in the media a comparison of Hiroshima and Gaza visually. Maybe people have seen that, the picture of the flattened Hiroshima city next to the flattened buildings and space of Gaza. And I'm going off script a little bit here. I'm sorry to the interpreter, but I just want to mention that I think it's very important that this comparison is being made, not just for the visual, but to understand the hole in history, the real depth of destruction. Of course, Gaza is not a nuclear weapon, and there's many, many more concerns that we have about the use of nuclear weapons, but just the heaviness and the amount of the bombing, the people of Hiroshima can relate to the people of Palestine in that way. And all of us, maybe most of us, haven't experienced that kind of fear or anxiety, but the long-term effects and the long-term trauma of what happened in Hiroshima has never really been atoned or addressed. And so I want to make that, as a sort of folding time in connecting Gaza and Hiroshima. This is just a continuation, basically, of the bomb. I really see it as that. So in learning from the Hibakusha are the survivors of the atomic weapon. We must be unequivocally opposed to nuclear weapons, nuclear reactors, and nuclear power, which are not sustainable in any way, despite how much they're being greenwashed right now for us to lure us into the possibility for unending power through nuclear. Nuclear reactors are just production facilities for nuclear materials to be used in weapons, basically. So when I got to Hiroshima, I didn't really know why I was there, but I came across a shrine in a temple called Mitakidera, and it contains the ashes of victims of Auschwitz that were sent on a peace march. They were received by peace marchers and brought back to Hiroshima. And when I saw that, it made me realize my connection to Hiroshima as a descendant of Holocaust victims and survivors, because my great-grandparents, my namesake Rebecca Goldschmidt, died in Auschwitz. And so I understood then this relationship between the fires and the lack of water and the ashes that we have also visually, not just visually, but spiritually in many ways between Auschwitz and Hiroshima. And then, of course, as an anti-Zionist, my work around Palestine has also been in trying to now connect Hiroshima to this issue as well. In denouncing Israel as a violent militarized state, with, of course, unequivocal support, unending, uncontrolled support from the United States, we also have to remember that Israel is proportionately the largest nuclear weapons state because of its size and how many nuclear weapons that it has. It has about 90 to 100 nuclear weapons plus nuclear material. And since October 7th, there have been multiple Israeli politicians that have openly called for the use of, quote, the doomsday weapon, or that the nuclear bomb is one way to deal with the Gaza Strip. It seems completely irrational and totally just out of the realm of possibility to even think of something like that. But just the sense of us being in that kind of situation where politicians are openly calling for the use of nuclear weapon is a very dangerous state to be in, despite all of the many other atrocities that are being committed. Just the verbal indication, one, that nuclear weapons even exist in Israel because Israel has operated under nuclear opacity, this idea that no one knows if they have nuclear weapons or not. That's kind of been the history of the nuclear program until there was a whistleblower in the 80s who revealed that they do have it and confirmed. So we know, everyone knows that Israel has nuclear weapons, but everyone wants to pretend that they don't. So to me, these are all very terrifying ideas. And I'm sorry if this is like triggering and scary for people, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and just mention that I was in Okinawa recently on Ishigaki-jima, which is a small island. And I was spending time with some of the grandmothers there who are anti-base organizers. And every week they have a protest and they hold their signs that say no war, no base, no missiles. And when I asked Setsuko-san, who's one of the main organizers there, she's 86. And she's been protesting the development of that island for a long time. And I said, what do you think about what's happening in Palestine? And she said, we have to raise our voices together. And the people of Okinawa have been fighting US militarization for decades and Japanese militarization, because that's also what's happening now is the US is funding militarization all over Asia. Every day in the news, there's another article about how much money is being sent to Malaysia, how much money is being sent to the Philippines. The nuclear program in the Philippines is about to be restarted. Of course, Taiwan just received more funds to improve their communications. So I'm here to communicate from all the way across the ocean that the drive for war with China and with Taiwan is just building more and more and more. And what's happening in Palestine has really set the bar beyond what any of us can possibly imagine. And if we cannot stop what's happening in Palestine, we don't know what's possible for what's next. And the stage is already being set on this side for so much more violence and potential for all of the things that we just are saying we don't want in our new world. We don't want nuclear weapons in our world. We don't want water to be withheld from people. We don't want people to be bombed. And so I guess myself, along with many other organizers and activists and elders and fishermen and farmers and students and the many, many people of conscious of this whole part of the world that is made up of many, many thousands of islands. No one wants this. And so I basically am just here to pass the message along to everyone that as queer Jews, even if there's not that many of us here over on this side, that it's very important for us to be in alignment with these other communities, with indigenous communities of the Philippines who are fighting the mining, with indigenous communities all over Asia and other people's movements all over the world, because this is part of a much longer history and bigger history of resisting war, of resisting violence and the militarization. Because it's not only that the weapons are awful, it's that the bases are, and the culture around the bases and the contamination. Oh, I could wax on and on about this, but I'm basically going to end with saying that I think Palestine has been converted into what is basically a nuclear US military base. And I think that's extremely dangerous and terrifying, and no one wants to talk about it at that level. And I think it's really important that we do. And I think that our family stories as Jewish people and our stories of our ancestors and how they died in Auschwitz and how they've been oppressed for many, many years are now the cover for this great, great inhuman injustice. And I think I just want to emphasize that despite the fact this is like very scary, if we can queer nuclear, and I have some more resources in the document that you guys can look at and where some of these ideas are coming from. But queerness is a threat to security. Queerness is a threat to, the status quo, and queerness is a threat to just these binaries between what is secure, what is safe, and what is not safe, and what is secure and what is vulnerable. And I think we can use these parts of, we can use this identity and our ways of being as inherently oppositional to something like nuclear, which is about dividing the world into two, which is, safe and not safe, scary and not scary, those kinds of ways that the world keeps being divided. And I think that's all that I want to say, but I do have, some more resources, including a cheat sheet on why Palestine is a nuclear issue. And I think the last thought is that if there's any kind of sense of relief in studying nuclear, which is generally is just a lot of anxiety producing information, but it does give you the sense of deep time, and that with deep time we can think of just the endlessness of time and the endlessness of our universe, and that this is just one droplet of our struggle, one droplet of our joy, one droplet of our pain in this extremely expansive continuum. And so whether or not we will be in this space forever, I can't say that we will be, but I just encourage all of us to, we're join hands with all of the people around us who have the similar feeling of fighting against these massive injustices. And even though it is terrifying, I still have a sense of, like Penny was saying earlier, just love, and that extending the rose, which is also a symbol of the anti-nuclear movement, is the rose. So I just want to share some of those thoughts, and also really want to thank Rebecca Arov for just putting in so much work to bring us all together, and to Kyle also from Queer Mikvah, and just the Queer Mikvah family, everyone who's here. I know that I went over time and I'm sorry, but thanks everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca. And thank you for really calling us into the truth telling, which all of our panelists here today are sharing, but that call that you made, that's part of queering, is telling the truth about what has happened and what's going on now, because that does clear the waters, that allows us to address what's actually going on, instead of this numbing and this constant lying and gaslighting that we're experiencing from our governments. We have to, we need to wrap it up a bit, but I know, Rebecca, there's a question in the chat that I think that will get addressed in the follow-up material. There is a question from Max Zine, and that we'll address that and then wrap it up. The question is about challenging pinkwashing in the LGBTQ plus communities in nearby Nashville. The HRC, as usual, is supported by some not so nice corporations, including military giant Northrop Grumman, a company that has a full page ad in HRC's upcoming annual dinner program. I'm discussing with Jews, queers, and queer Jews challenging HRC on this. Any thoughts or suggestions of strategies would be welcome.
I mean, it's Dean. Hi. I'm just imagining the incredibly fabulous disruption that Maxine and others might engage in. I I think this long-term work that we've all been doing for decades to disrupt the pro-police, pro-war, pro-border, supposedly queer or whatever, LGBT or whatever, orgs is really important. It's like they are recruiting people to fascism. Like, it's like no one, you know what I mean? Like, this is true of groups like A Wider Bridge that try to recruit Jews to being pro-Israel. And it's also true of groups like HRC that collaborate with the State Department and with, as Maxine is pointing out, war profiteers. Like, I think organizing our communities to disrupt those moments, whether that's getting a lot of people or just a few people, to disrupt those events and name what's happening, is always worthwhile and can be, festive and build a queer sensibility of why joining our movements and doing this in radical ways is like a place for connection, creativity, and beauty at its best.
Thanks, Dean. Well, we need to wrap it up. This has been a fabulous event with so much depth and truth-telling and information and engaging and inviting us to continue to participate in our work for Palestinian liberation. It's really like just feeling the sweetness and the care of people in this space and all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. I want to mention again, especially for people who came late, that Zephyr may have the opportunity to go over to Palestine, or to the border at least, on a project called the Conscious Convoy. That's part of the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And if they are able to do that, they'll be looking for airline miles to be donated from Delta or Air France or Air Emirates. So if you have any of those airline miles, please email queermikvahproject@gmail.com, and we can be in conversation with you about how we can get those to Zephyr and support them. And the other piece is this is also a fundraising event for Queer Mikvah Project. As you might imagine, it's very difficult for us to get funding for this project with our anti-Zionist politics. And we're also doing a joint fundraiser with a mental health clinic in the West Bank that we've built a relationship with. I shared at the beginning, the last event we were able to raise almost $6,000, and we sent 4,000 to the mental health clinic, and that felt really good. They really, really need the support right now. It's a mental health crisis moment. And so that's in the chat. You can send us money to our PayPal or our Venmo for that event. And just want to get the excitement going. Is anyone here in this moment? I know some people already donated, but anyone feel moved to make a donation and put that in the chat at the moment? We want to get people excited about moving resources in these directions as one of many actions we can do to support Free Palestine. And
Thank you, Ava.
Thank you, Ava. Yay, thank you. And I also am doing a fundraiser myself through these ritual boxes that I've made to share with people that will also go to, half the donation will also go to the mental health care clinic. And just so people know, it's like a major steal to get everything in this box. And the intention is to support you in creating magical ritual items in your work to continue working for a free Palestine. So thank you to everyone who's donated, and we'll keep you updated. We'll send out a recording of this, and we'll also have the recording from the first panel available. Both of them will be available on YouTube for public use, so please share them widely. This has been an incredible resource, these two panels together, that will be kept on the interwebs so lots more people can access them. And thanks again to Oren, our wonderful tech person, and our backup tech recording person, Vito, and our incredible ASL team, to Trisha and Ye and Joe and Jennifer. And thank you to Rebecca, to Penny, to Zephyr, to Dean, and to Mordecai. It's been really wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you. And I'll just end with this song by Rena Branson. If you know it, you can sing along. And if you don't want to hear many voices singing it, you should mute. But if you know it, here it is in the chat. We will not underestimate our power any longer. We know that together we are strong, like drops of water shape the rocks as they rush down the falls. We know that together we are strong. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.